In a bold and carefully worded statement during his official visit to Harare, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa sent shockwaves across the region when he declared, "I don't want South Africa to be like Zimbabwe." His remark, delivered in front of business leaders, diplomats, and the Zimbabwean political elite, was both a reassurance to his own citizens back home and a sharp reminder of the challenges facing Southern Africa as a whole. The comment came at a joint press briefing alongside President Emmerson Mnangagwa, where Ramaphosa spoke openly about the risks of economic decline, corruption, and political instability. While he was careful not to directly criticize Zimbabwe's internal policies, his words carried a heavy implication. South Africa is watching the lessons of its northern neighbor and is determined to avoid a similar fate. Ramaphosa began by acknowledging the shared history between the two nations' liberation struggles, solidarity during apartheid, and a long-standing cross-border relationship. However, his tone shifted as he spoke about the dangers of governance failures. "Our people deserve stability, opportunities, and progress," he said. "We cannot afford to repeat mistakes that destroy industries, collapse agriculture, and force millions to flee their homeland." Those listening in Harare knew exactly what he meant. Zimbabwe's economic crisis over the past 2 decades has been marked by hyperinflation, mass unemployment, and a migration crisis that has seen millions of Zimbabweans cross into South Africa in search of better opportunities. For many South Africans, the influx has created tensions in communities, stretching resources and sparking fierce debates about immigration. Ramaphosa's statement seemed aimed at both audiences, reassuring South Africans that their government would not let the country slide into chaos, and challenging Zimbabwe to confront its ongoing governance and economic woes. The reference to Zimbabwe was not accidental. The once thriving nation, once hailed as the breadbasket of Africa, has become a cautionary tale. Ramaphosa, aware of the political risks, framed the issue in terms of lessons rather than blame. Still, the symbolic weight of his words resonated across the border. Economists in South Africa have long warned that the nation is teetering on a dangerous path. Persistent load shedding, high unemployment, corruption scandals, and weakening institutions have created comparisons often whispered but rarely said outright by top officials to Zimbabwe's trajectory in the early 2000s. Ramaphosa broke that silence in Harare itself, acknowledging the fears many citizens already express in the streets, media, and online forums. For Ramaphosa, this was more than just rhetoric, it was political positioning. At home, he faces mounting pressure from opposition parties, civil society, and even within the African National Congress, ANC. Public trust in the government has declined sharply, and Ramaphosa has often been accused of indecisiveness. By drawing a firm line, South Africa will not become Zimbabwe, he placed himself as a leader willing to confront uncomfortable truths head-on. However, the diplomatic risks cannot be ignored. Zimbabwe remains a key ally in the Southern African Development Community, SADC. Ramaphosa's government has often defended Zimbabwe on international platforms, pushing back against Western sanctions and advocating for African solutions to African problems. His statement, while domestically powerful, risks being seen in Harare as a veiled criticism of Mnangagwa's leadership. The remark has already sparked intense debate across Southern Africa. In Johannesburg, many citizens praised Ramaphosa's bluntness. Social media lit up with messages such as, "Finally, the president said what we've been saying for years, and we must learn from Zimbabwe before it's too late." In Harare, the reaction was more guarded. Some in government circles reportedly saw the statement as undiplomatic, while opposition groups seized on it as validation of their long-standing critiques of Mnangagwa's rule. Regional analysts noted that Ramaphosa is walking a fine line trying to maintain solidarity with Zimbabwe while signaling to South Africans that he will not allow the country to fall into similar decay. Ultimately, Ramaphosa's words reflect a broader struggle in Africa, how to ensure governance, democracy, and accountability in the face of deep economic and political pressures. For South Africa, the stakes are enormous. Already grappling with declining investor confidence, power shortages, and social unrest, the country cannot afford to ignore the warning signs. By openly referencing Zimbabwe, Ramaphosa placed the debate at the center of his presidency, South Africa's future direction. Will it continue down a path of corruption, mismanagement, and decay, or can it pull back and chart a new course of renewal, reform, and economic recovery? For ordinary South Africans, the statement is both a warning and a promise. Ramaphosa was telling citizens that he hears their fears, that he recognizes the risks, and that his government will strive to protect the country from collapse. For Zimbabweans, the message was more complicated, both a gesture of solidarity and a subtle call for introspection. As the applause faded in the Harare conference hall, one thing was clear: Ramaphosa had struck a chord not only in South Africa but across the region. His words may prove to be one of the defining moments of his presidency, a reminder that leadership is not just about managing crises but about speaking truths that many would rather avoid.